Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from ExecuteAutomation.com, and today we are going to be talking about migrating to Specflow 3, which is something we have been waiting for a pretty long time right now. So migrating from Specflow 2 to Specflow 3 in Visual Studio 2019 is something that we were looking for a pretty long time right now, and it's really happening right now. So you hear it right. Specflow 3 released a couple of weeks before now supports Visual Studio 2019 as well, which means you can install Specflow 3 plugin within Visual Studio 2019 as well, and it works like charm. So the Specflow 3.0 has many new features, but some of the most awesome features which I feel are something great about Specflow 3 are these. It supports .NET Core, which is really awesome. That's something that we have been waiting for almost from Specflow 2.0 to happen, because .NET Core has been released pretty long time before from Microsoft, and Specflow is something which is lagging behind in the support of .NET Core. If you remember, I released .NET Core support with Specflow sometimes before, and that was not a full support though, but still it was kind of a workaround. But right now Specflow officially supports .NET Core, and also there is a support for ArrayList and array for available items value retriever when instantiating classes from Specflow table. So this was something which was not happening, and we always try to have a workaround for this, and right now you can see that these supports are available out of the box. Gherkin language data is used instead of an obsolete copy, which is cool because every time if Gherkin language updates, Specflow is kind of lagging behind in terms of those updation. But right now they don't really use the obsolete copy, rather they directly use the Gherkin language data, which is cool. So these are some of the great things which is available within Specflow 3.0, which I feel are very important and impressive as well. So today in this video, I'm going to have a completely different environment setup compared to the one which I had before and which I was showing you all these days. So I have the following environment setup on new softwares installed within my machine today. Some of them are these. I have the Windows 10 latest May 2019 update, which is 1903. So right now it's May 2019, and I have already installed May 2019 within my Dell laptop, even though there is no official support for it yet. I just took a risk of how thing is working, and it seems like it's working pretty fine. And then I have installed Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition, which is free, and it also works fine without any problem. And finally, I have also installed the Specflow plugin for 2019, and it also works like charm. So these are some of the three important, latest, and the greatest software which is available within my machine. And today we are going to be working on these three different softwares for the Specflow upgradation. So these are some of the few errors that you'll be seeing. As you can see, the view itself has got some error in the slide. So as you can see that once you take your existing code, you will get this kind of error. It says that the string of array to string cannot be converted. Similarly, the on scenario start is something which is not available as well in the Specflow's scenario info. And similarly, you will have all these kind of errors while you take your existing code to start upgradation. So make sure you do a complete backup of your existing code before you start upgrading, because you will run into a lot of problems. But this video is going to be covering all those problems while you upgrade your code. So these are the Specflow configuration that one should require to perform the Specflow migration. The first one is installing Specflow latest edition extension plus NUnit test runner in your Visual Studio 2019, and then you need to update the feature file to not use the code behind and the custom generator by updating the project file. And also you can do the same thing from the Visual Studio properties though, so you need to do that as well. So these are the two things. That's first thing that you need to be doing within your project. And then you need to remove the NUnit test provider tag in the app.config, because that's kind of obsolete right now. It won't support at all in the latest edition. So even if you have that and if you try to build your project, you will get an error saying the unit test provider tag is kind of not applicable for the Specflow anymore. And now you can see that there are two kind of test runners available. One is specflow.mstest for the mstest runner. Similarly, there is specflow.nunit for the nunit runner. Similarly, there is for xunit and things of that nature. So Specflow has created a completely separate test runner this time instead of using this nunit test provider tag. So you need to install these separate NuGet package while you use within your code. And also, as I said before, make sure that you should not add more than one test runner, because if you install 2 or more test runner within your code, it's going to be throwing the error as well. So make sure you don't do that. And finally, you need to install the NuGet package, which is nothing but the specflow.tools.msbuild.generation package. So this is another package that is required for your code to be executed, because without this package, it is going to be throwing an error as well. Again, it's going to be like a custom generator for your code to be generated behind the scene for the feature file. So these are the 4 different things that we need to be doing within our Specflow migration from Specflow 2 to Specflow 3 for the smooth and most easiest transition that I have found while digging into this particular migration process. And of course, I have migrated that in my real-time project as well. So let's quickly see everything in action and understand how things work. So for that, I'm going to flip to my Visual Studio 2019 IDE. Alright, so now I'm in my latest version of Windows 10 operating system, and as you can see, this is called as the Light theme, which is introduced by Microsoft a couple of weeks before. They just released it, and I tried to install that and play around with it, and it's kind of very cool to see that the whole operating system itself has evolved a lot from the days while Windows itself was kind of crazy from Mac operating system, and now it's kind of very interesting to see that everything is kind of coming out very well these days. And as you can see, the search by hitting the Windows Q has brought something pretty interesting as well. I can see that all these things which were not there before is all coming up pretty well. If you just go to the app, you can see what are the recent app that I have used and all those stuff. These are kind of very cool. So I'll be using this particular operating system in this particular video. Alright, so I'm going to open the Visual Studio 2019, the latest edition of Visual Studio. You can see that I have never created even a single project from this. So I'm just going to be cloning an existing code from our ExecuteAutomation GitHub repo. So if I go over here, so as you can see, this is basically the Edge Chrome browser. This is also kind of very new and very interesting to see that how Microsoft is building things for us. So you can see this is Microsoft Edge, and this is not a Chrome browser though, but still they are using the Chromium based project, and that's why it's pretty interesting and very fast as well. I can install all the plugins which I can use within the Chrome browser within this particular Microsoft Edge based Chromium project as well. Alright, so the stories aside, I'm just going to be jump into my GitHub of ExecuteAutomation, GitHub ExecuteAutomation. So today I'm going to be cloning this particular Selenium with Specflow project, which is the repo we have been using pretty long time before. You can see it's from 3 years. So I'm just going to be copying this particular guy, and I'm going to be cloning within my Windows somewhere within my PC. So I'm just going to go over here. Right, I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call this as code. And within this, I'm just going to be doing a git clone of this particular guy. I'm just gonna hit enter. So as you can see that the project has been cloned, and I'm gonna go to the Specflow parallel test, and I'm gonna hit OK. So this is gonna open the Visual Studio 2019. Of course, it has opened in a different window for me. So I'm just gonna drag this guy, and then you can see that this is the Visual Studio 2019 for us guys. It's kind of interesting as well. There are so many different new features available for this, but I'll be talking about that later. So as I said in the slide before, we need to install a couple of plugins to make this particular Visual Studio to be up and running with all those Specflow things, because I have not installed any one of them in the extensions as of now. So I'm gonna go to the extensions, I'm gonna go to the online, and then I'm gonna search for Specflow. That way you can install this particular Specflow plugin to be installed within your machine. You can see it has version 2019 in here in the version number, which means it supports Visual Studio 2019 as well. And then I'm gonna install the NUnit test adapter. So I'm gonna install that as well. And then I guess these are the 2 important plugins that I need to install for this particular demonstration. I'm going to close this Visual Studio so that it is going to install the 2 packages for me. I'm going to close this particular Visual Studio as well. So you can see that it is installing these 2 packages for me. In the meantime, I'm just going to jump into the Specflow documentation here to show you the configurations that is actually being used within this particular Specflow 3.0. As you can see, the configuration has been moved to a JSON file right now. So previously we were using the app.config file for holding all the Specflow related stuffs, but right now Specflow team is slowly migrating from app.config file to specflow.json file so that they can start using the specflow.json file which is used in the .NET Core project, because the .NET Core project currently don't support app.config at all because it's a cross-platform based project. You cannot use the app.config there, even though you can, but still the project is not something which is going to use that. And that's the reason now everything has been moving to the specflow.json file, which is kind of a standard for the open source community as well. And that's exactly what's happening in Specflow as well, guys. They are moving to specflow.json file. So we'll be talking about that a little bit, because we're not going to be talking about the .NET Core yet, which we'll be talking in our next video. But as of now, you can see that these are some of the changes, like a breaking change which has happened in the Specflow 3. And other than that, these are pretty much exactly the same thing that we'll be discussing in this particular video. So I'll be talking about that pretty quickly. So I'll again open the Visual Studio 2019. You can see that the loading of the project is pretty faster than before in 2019. And now once I have everything, if I just do a build solution, you can see that I get some sort of error here that the Selenium Chrome driver build something which is not available and things of that nature, which is fine. The reason is because we are going to be upgrading everything. So if I just right click the references, go to the manage NuGet package, and if I go to the updates, as you can see, there are like 21 updates available for all the projects that we have. So I'm just going to be updating most of them except the extent reporting, which we have already discussed. There are so many breaking changes available. So I'm just going to ignore that alone. So I'm just going to select all, extent report, I just remove that. And I'm just going to leave all of them. And you can see that the Specflow has been upgraded from version 2.2 to 3.0. So I'm just going to update that. And all the updates have been done completely here, right? And then I'm going to go to the browse, and this time, since we're going to be using the Firefox browser, I'm going to be showing you a little bit tweaked. What happened here is, so if I search for Geeko driver, you can see that there is something called as selenium.webdriver.geeko driver.win64. So there is a latest version of Win64 based Geeko driver is also available. So if you install the Firefox right now, it is in 64-bit edition already. So you need to have this particular 64-bit edition of Geeko driver as well. So I'm going to be installing that within my project in here. So once everything is done, and you can see that these are the 4 errors that you'll be getting as I told in the screenshot before in the slide. So these are the things which is coming actually from the feature files. So if you see the feature files in here, you can see that these are the things which is going to be complaining you some of the errors, saying the on scenario start doesn't exist. Similarly, this particular new string of array is not exist, something like that. So these are something which has been changed completely. So probably you need to drop a support of that. I also have one more issue here, that the Specflow plugin is kind of very slow. It's not loaded yet. Let me try to close this Visual Studio. I know the Visual Studio is kind of very new, so there may be some cases where it may go wrong, but I have seen this, it's working fine. So I'll just open this again. There you go. Now I can see the logo of the feature file, and I could able to navigate if I'm not wrong. This is how you can see that the whole project has been built without any problem, except the few issues that I was talking about. So if I just remove this particular feature files from here, the CS files, the code behind files, these issues will be resolved as well. So the steps that we need to do to take care before starting to upgrade our code. So the first thing, install Specflow latest edition extension and NUnit runner. It's all done in our Visual Studio. And then update feature files, not use the code behind custom generator. So how to change that particular stuff? So if you just click this particular feature, you can see that there is a custom tool called Specflow single file generator. Just try to remove this particular single file generator from here, because we are not going to be using this particular Specflow custom generator anymore. So you don't really have to have them anymore as well, right? So I'm quickly going to save that. So once I save this, you can see that the code behind file has been completely gone. So now if I try to build this particular solution, the build got succeeded here, which means your code is almost correct right now. So you may be thinking that once the code behind file is gone, you cannot navigate to this particular step definition file. So if I just go to the step definition, you can see that I can still able to navigate here without any problem, which is kind of cool, right? So it still works without any problem, and there is no problem in that area as of now. So the code behind file is gone, which is pretty cool. And the next thing is we need to install the specflow.mstest or specflow.nunit test runner as a reference within our manage NuGet package. So we don't really have the what is called as the nunit test provider tag anymore. Just search for specflow.nunit. So because I'm going to be using the nunit, you can see that you have this particular specflow.nunit package right now. Similarly, for mstest, if you search for mstest, you can see mstest in here. So I'm going to be using the nunit, and then I'm going to be installing this particular specflow.nunit to have this particular feature, and then I'm going to hit yes. You can see that the date of publishing is on 7th May. So all these particular plugins are kind of very, very new as well. And we have downloaded that. And finally, we also need to download the specflow.tools.msbuild.generation as well. So I'm just going to go to the manage NuGet package, and then I'm going to search for this particular package, which is kind of new as well. So I'm going to install that. There you go. Now everything is pretty much done. I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to close this. I'm going to build the solution. Now you can see that the build got succeeded as well, right? Now if I go to the feature over here, you can see that I get this particular feature file, and let me try to remove these particular feature files completely from here, and let's try to build the solution. We can see that currently we don't really have any of the test being shown here, and once I build it, you can see that I see all the different kinds of test here, right? So I can now run this particular test, and also I can see how things are actually working without any problem. So I can just right click, run the selected test, and you can see that there will be a browser being spawned, and the code starts to work without any problem. Seems like I don't really have Firefox browser in my machine, so I'm just gonna download the Firefox as well. So this is a brand new operating system I have installed in my laptop. So let me also download that. There you go. The new Firefox has been installed in my machine. And also I'll make sure one more thing to be commented out, because that's kind of very, very crazy error. This is not something correct. I'm going to be updating this particular code, and I will report this to you guys pretty soon regarding the pending status. And also I will remove this particular CLO reporting to not use the historical report. So I'm just going to be removing that as well. And also I have changed this particular program file from x86 to the 64-bit edition, which is program files folder, right? I think looking good. Now if I try to build the solution, everything should be fine. And now if I try to run this particular test, hopefully the test will run without any problem. So let's see what's going to happen. So once I hit this run selected test, it is going to open the Firefox browser for me, and the test got passed, which is pretty cool. So this is how we can do a very, very super simple migration of our existing Specflow 2.0 code to Specflow 3. So now you can ask that, why are we really using everything like this? I mean, why are we really sticking with the nunit here by installing the specflow.nunit? So what if I want to use the specflow.mstest in parallel? So why can't I just go and install the specflow.mstest within in here, something like this? You can see it brings me up. So once I install this, what will happen is it is going to be installing without any problem. There won't be any issues while you install this particular package. You can see that everything works like charm, like before. The package has been added. But now, if you try to build this particular solution, you can see that the build got failed, and it said that the unit test provider already set, which means it's somehow been set somewhere, which is the MS test, which is the N unit from MS test already, but you're trying to install the second package and it is throwing you an error. So it is actually coming from this particular project over here, right? So that's the reason I told you that please don't try to install two different unit test provider within the same project. So if you do, it is not going to be working. It is going to be throwing you an error. So please try to use only one particular unit test provider. If not, you're going to get this kind of errors. And the last thing that we're going to be discussing today is going to be the Specflow configuration itself. As Specflow is going to move completely from app.config file to specflow.json file for the cross-platform support and the .NET Core support, Specflow is going to start slowly using the JSON file moving forward. But as of now, the configuration itself has not fully supported the specflow.json file. Still, the app.config is required for some of the options in the full framework. But for the .NET Core, specflow.json file supports all the different configurations, as you can see in here. So you can see for the full framework only, property mentioned here saying this is only available for this unit test provider. Similarly, you can see the generator and the runtimes, or these are the things which is currently not available in the specflow.json file as well. You cannot use that, but these things is going to slowly roll out for the specflow.json file. So how to add this particular file? Just right click and hit add, and then go to the new item and search for Specflow, and you can see there is something called as Specflow JSON configuration. So this is kind of very new. It was not there before, and it is currently available over here. So I'm just gonna add the specflow1.json file, something like this. So you can see that it has been added, and there is a template of all the different kinds of stuffs it is currently supporting, something like the binding culture, language, and the plugin. So if you have multiple plugins, you can specify that as well. So for instance, if I want to use a different language, let's say if I want to use French or something like that, if we make changes over here, then automatically that change is going to be reflected for this particular features over here. So currently I'm using the ENUS for the English language, but if I use a different language, it's going to be throwing me an error. If I just choose the language as CY and GB, if I hit save, and if I try to build the solution, oops, but before that I need to also remove this particular error. So let me go to the reference, manage NuGet package, installed, remove the MS test completely. And also the specflow.json file, if you click this particular guy, go to the property, and I need to always say copy always, or copy if newer. Save it, and I hit build solution, and you can see that I'm getting different kinds of error, and it says that the language is not correct. So basically this is the language which I have not even chosen. It's all in English language, and once I do that, all the features that I have got is going to be throwing me the errors. The reason is because the language is completely different. So basically it should be ENUS for the correct version of the language that I'm currently using. So if I build the solution right now, you can see that the error is completely gone. So this is how we can use the specflow.json file, and in coming days the specflow.json file is going to be used heavily for many different options currently available with Specflow. So that's it, guys. These are the different kinds of things that you need to know for migrating from Specflow 2.0 to 3.0 for all the different features and rich features which is currently available with Specflow 3.0 with Visual Studio 2019. So that's it, guys. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day.